Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Brilliant Metrics webinar. Today we are talking about brand awareness on a budget. So a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, do ask questions. If you do ask questions, please post them into the chat. You can do that whether you're on the live stream or if you're coming in through Zoom. I'll be monitoring both sets of chats, and if I can't get to your question live as I'm presenting, I will definitely get to it at the end. Also, a copy of these slides will be sent to you. If you're coming in through the Zoom, we have your email address already, and we'll make sure to get those to you. If you're coming in through the live stream, there will be a QR code at the end. You can go ahead and scan that, fill out a form with just your email address, and we'll get you a copy of the slides along with any resources that we talk about during the presentation today. With that, a little bit about me. My name is Steve Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO here at Brilliant Metrics. I do a fair amount of public speaking. I recently started mentoring some startups through UW Milwaukee's Ignite Incubator. I love teaching. It's my happy place. So this is my favorite thing to be doing right now. And I'm so glad that all of you are able to join me here today. A little bit about Brilliant Metrics. This is the only part of this that's at all salesy or pitchy. Brilliant Metrics is a B2B strategic agency. What makes us different is that we really help our clients find clarity in the chaos, in the craziness that is today's B2B marketing world. We have 6 proven methodologies or playbooks that we pattern match against our clients so that we can pretty much guarantee success. If you're at all interested in that, please do reach out to me. And with that, let's dive into today's agenda. Today, we're going to be talking about brand advertising on a budget, a smarter way to go about raising brand awareness among your target market. To do that, first, I have to talk a little bit about traditional brand advertising. What did we learn in school about brand advertising? And from there, we'll talk a little bit about brain science. How you can architect a brand advertising strategy that targets the filter, and that'll make sense when we get there. Finally, we'll round it out with we'll round it out with a blueprint for the perfect brand ad, and set you up with some action steps so you can take this and run with it when you get off the webinar. With that, let's dig in. So when we think about a traditional brand ad, you usually have a certain thing in mind, and it probably looks something like this. All right, so we've got puppies and horses and probably a crazy big budget, right? But what made this effective? The strong hook grabbed attention. Out of the gate, we have this snowstorm and this pending disaster to get your attention and get you in. There's a consistent visual identity to it. It looks like a classic Budweiser ad. The Budweiser logo shows up at a number of points, as well as obviously the big "This Bud's for you" at the end. Huge emotional pull. I mean, we got puppies and horses and feel good get-togethers in a local bar. The storytelling maintains engagement. You want to see what's happening next. And then I think what's most important in this particular spot is there's clear values and brand personality to create affinity and really, really bond with it. Rich tradition and gathering of people and all of that comes together in this spot to really make it a compelling brand advertisement. Wonderful. I mean, it's textbook. It's perfect. It's also, easily 6 to 7 figures of production plus distribution. This ran in the Super Bowl. Not in reach for probably most anyone on this call. So what do we do instead? How do we accomplish some of the same things that this ad accomplished in a bite-sized budget? And the answer is you hack it. You do it differently. Before I can get into that hack, before I can get into how we can accomplish the same thing at a fraction of the budget, I have to do a little bit of education. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about System 1 and System 2. This is a way of looking at the brain. Now, before I can do that, though, I have a little request of you. I'm about to pop a question up on the screen. I want you to not answer the question. Don't answer it in your head. Don't answer it verbally out loud. Don't put it in the chat. Do not answer the question. Now, were you able to do it? My guess is not. My guess is that you answered this question whether you wanted to or not. Let's try this again. Don't answer this question. Were you able to do that one? I'm guessing yes. I'm guessing most of you on this webinar were able to easily not answer 13 times 17. So what was the difference there? Why were you not able to not answer 2 plus 2, but 13 times 17 was no problem? And the answer is a little bit more subtle than simply, well, I have 2 plus 2 memorized. 2 plus 2 was answered by what Daniel Kahneman refers to as System 1. Daniel Kahneman published a book based on some research that he did with another scientist, social scientist. They won a Nobel Prize for it. And it's all in this book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a really great read for marketers, although it's thick and it's dense. So if that's not your kind of book, be warned. But he outlines 2 different systems in our brain. System 1 is fast and automatic. It's not particularly strong, though. It's relatively weak. It can't do 13 times 17, but it knows 2 plus 2. And it's low effort. It will dive in and do things without you even asking it to. System 2 is slow and deliberate. It's powerful. It can do 13 times 17. And there's a small portion of the audience that went and figured that out because it bugged them that you didn't know the answer. But for the rest of us, we would sit down and put the effort in to figure out 13 times 17. We can all do it. It just requires System 2 to dive in and do it. When we look at System 1 and System 2, System 1, to break it down a little bit further, it serves a number of core functions. It answers simple questions. It performs muscle memory tasks. So when you're driving, chances are you're engaging System 1, which is why we accidentally drive home sometimes instead of driving to the store, which we meant to do. It learns indiscriminately through repetition, and I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. But most importantly to today's conversation, it filters input and it passes only the relevant information to System 2. And we'll talk more about that in a moment as well. System 2, on the other hand, it's the part of your brain that does the logical thinking and the problem solving and digs in. It learns deliberately through thought. When you're studying and you go back to college, you're studying a textbook and you have to be focused to understand what the textbook is saying. That's System 2 thinking. It is alerted by System 1 when something comes across our comes across our vision, our ears, our senses that requires that engaged thought, that attention. Okay, I want you to think back to the last time you bought a car. Chances are really good that at some point during that buying process, it could have been after you did your initial research, but before you went for the test drive, maybe it was after the test drive, maybe it was after you bought the car, that all of a sudden you started seeing your make and model of car everywhere on the road. Why? Why did that happen? Well, the answer is that prior to that purchase process, System 1 was filtering that information out. It wasn't raising the flag, hey, you need to pay attention to this Mazda 6 on the road over here. System 1 was diverting your attention to other more important things. But after you'd started that buying process, or at some point during that buying process, you trained System 1 that this make and model of car is important because I'm thinking of buying it, right? And so now all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's important. Oh, there's a Mazda 6. We need to let Steve know right away because there's a Mazda 6 and that's important to him right now. System 1 serves as a filter and raises the things that are important and filters out the rest. And this is an incredibly important function. We are inundated with information, and it's only getting worse. In 2024, we're processing approximately 74 gigabytes of information. If you were to put that all on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, that's 25,000 pieces of paper that we're processing every single day between our Instagram and Facebook and TikTok feeds, our kids asking for later bedtimes, our coworkers hitting us on Slack, emails, instant messages, our text messages, signs, you name it. We're constantly getting thrown info. If our brains didn't have a way of filtering that out without putting it all into our direct consciousness, we'd go crazy. That's System 1's job. So as a brand marketer, what most, at least high budget brand marketers try to do is get through that filter with their ad. That's what that Budweiser ad is doing. It is captivating you with the snowstorm and getting you to pay attention and then hooking you with strong emotion and storytelling to break through System 1 in that filter, get to System 2 and get your attention. It's expensive. It's hard. You're constantly forced to produce new, novel, entertaining, or interesting content and pieces to be able to do it. And if it's focused on brand building and affinity building, you're not allowed to sell anything in those pieces anyway. So it's not directly attributing to revenue. Most of us don't have the budget and the capabilities to be able to consistently do that. So what we do with our clients is instead of trying to break through the filter to System 2, market to the filter instead. Market to System 1. System 1 is controlling what all of your prospects see and pay attention to. It is controlling when they have a problem, what immediately comes to mind as the potential solution. We don't need to break through the filter. We need to market to the filter. So how do you market to the filter? Well, again, before I dive into this, let's play another little game here. Knock, knock. I'll bet your System 1 answered who's there, whether you meant to or not. What word's missing from here? And finally, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. None of those three things had multi-million-dollar brand ad commercials running out on the Super Bowl. And yet your System 1 knew the correct response to each one of those questions and gave it to you whether you wanted it or not. You can influence System 1 through rote repetition. You can teach it through rote repetition, and you can teach System 1 and every single one of your prospects about your brand through rote repetition if you do it right. And not only will your prospects be able to fill in the blank with your brand at the right point in time, but they'll actually come to like you more. If you've been hanging around Brilliant Metrics for any reasonable amount of time, you probably heard me talk about this before. So for those of you, those veterans in the group, I apologize for the redundancy here. And for the rest of you, one of my favorite cognitive biases, ways our brains are broken, that I love to take advantage of is something called the mere exposure effect. So what you see on the screen here is a graph. It's a graph representing the frequency of nonsense words. This came out of a study in the 60s. You can tell because it's a hand-drawn graph. Imagine having to do your graphs hand-drawn with pen and paper. It is a hand-drawn graph from a research study run in the 60s across two schools, University of Michigan and Michigan State. And what the researchers did is they published nonsense words in the school newspaper. And this is back when it was like literally a paper newspaper, right? And they published these nonsense words in the school newspaper. The first half of the list was at a high frequency at Michigan State and at a low frequency at University of Michigan. The back half of the list was at a low frequency at Michigan State and at a high frequency at the University of Michigan. And then they surveyed the student population. Oh, by the way, if anybody called the school newspaper and said, why are there nonsense words on the front page of the newspaper? They were told to respond, a generous benefactor has asked us to print these, no questions asked. Can you imagine fielding that phone call? Anyway, they surveyed the student population and asked them, not how familiar are these words? That's an obvious question to ask. They asked, do these nonsense words mean something good or bad? Rate the goodness on a scale of 1 to 5. You know, you read a word and you kind of, even if you don't know the word, you kind of get a feeling for it, right? This is the cool part. The words that were presented at a high frequency came up as more good. They meant good things. They had goodwill associated with them. And what this means to us as marketers is repeated exposure of our brand will cause our prospects to think more highly of our brand, to like us more, to think we're good. That can be capitalized on. And I know this to be true because we actually ran our own study. So we had a client that was a little skeptical of all of this. And so we ran a study with their brand advertisement. And we ran a control group where we just pushed content out, educational content, usually educational content that was a little bit salesy in nature, right? And then the other group, we pushed educational content alongside some brand ads that did not have a CTA on them. We did it across 3 other market segments, and we personalized the brand ads and the content to those market segments. And in all 3 cases, we saw a lift. And if you average it all together, we saw a 90% lift in the engagement with the content. Because they had had repeated exposure to the brand, they, were more likely to notice the content as they scrolled through their Facebook feed or saw a banner ad on the side of a page. And B, they were more apt to trust the brand to provide valuable content. And so the engagement nearly doubled. That's just with their content. The same thing is probably true of their sales team making phone calls out in the field, of offers that were out there. Any other opportunity to engage with that brand was lifted through nothing more than rote repetition of the same ads in front of the same audience over and over again. So your mission is to teach the system ones out there in every prospect's mind that matters, that your brand exists. And equally importantly, we'll get into this in the second part here, when your brand is relevant to them, so that system one can surface it at the appropriate time. You do that through rote repetition over an extended period of time. You don't need a high frequency of these ads. You need to just keep them out there. And it doesn't have to be advertisements either. We'll get into that too. Okay. So the perfect brand ad blueprint, and I say brand ad, but we'll talk about how you can use the same formula outside of advertising. There are 4 key elements here: visual identity, position, simplicity, and the 4th one is technically a lack of an element, but no ask. We talk about visual identity. It doesn't do any good to create awareness and affinity for a brand if System 1 can't recognize that brand when it runs across it. It recognizes that brand through a tight visual identity. This is consistent use of your logo, of your colors, of your typography, speaking in a consistent tone, writing in a consistent language. All of these come together to make System 1 know it's in the same place as it was before when it saw your ad or your brand presented over and over and over again. Number 2 is position. If your organization isn't the obvious solution to a subset of the market, then it's really hard for System 1 to know when to surface your brand as the answer or when to draw attention to a piece of your content or an offer of yours. So when I say obvious solution for a subset of the market, what I mean is that you have a solution of value you're offering, and you have a subset of the market for whom it's perfect. When you present your brand, you need a tagline, you need it associated with an advertisement, you need it associated with messaging that clearly conveys what your solution is. This is what I'm selling, and here's who it's perfect for. Sorry, whom it's perfect for. My third grade teacher just popped in my head and yelled at me. All right. The next element is simplicity. System 1 reads at about a 4th grade level on a good day. System 1 is fast, but it's not especially bright. You cannot use big words. You cannot fill up your advertising and your presentation of your brand with a bunch of extra nonsense. You can't use similes and metaphors that aren't really, really obvious and relatable. You have to use plain language, short words, short sentences, simple concepts in order to be able to teach System 1 anything. And then finally, no ask. We love using HTML5 banner ads as our primary driver for brand advertisement. They can be cheap to get in front of people. They can convey, they can grab attention through motion. They can contain multiple simple messages that tie together to make one core brand promise or position. But we never put a button on them for a call to action. And the reason is it just clutters things up and it draws attention away from the core message you're trying to convey, which is this is who we are, this is what we look like, and this is what we stand for. This is our solution and who's perfect for it. So let's dive into some examples here. This is our client Hatco. Their brand is really centered around dependability. It's centered around quality of build and the idea that you buy one and you can run it for a very, very long time. This ad does a phenomenal job of conveying that dependability, and it clearly speaks to that subset of the market that cares about that dependability. It's clear that they sell equipment. It could be clear they sell food service equipment, but other than that, this nails that objective. Let's look at another one. Catholic Virtual offers online learning for Catholic schools. And so here, they're clearly articulating that that's what they offer. Our content, your school, but then they're narrowing that down to the subset of the market that really cares about Catholic values, right? And then our last one here. This one was in collaboration with a group called Noggin. I think Scott Burdett from Noggin might be on the webinar right now. They did a fabulous job with this ad. This is for a company called Guardian. They make software for foundries. And here we're very clear. The solution is software for foundries, and it's for people that want a solution that is specific to their industry, right? So that's the subset of the market. They don't want to deal with a fits-all. They don't want to go off the reservation. They want something that is exactly right for their industry. You notice none of these ads have a call to action. None of them are asking people to click here to buy now or learn more or anything like that. They are all focused on the core message. So let's make this actionable. Where do we go from here? Well, first of all, you probably have some homework to do from a design and creative standpoint. First of all, nail down your visual identity if you haven't done it already. If you don't have a style guide that you can consistently apply to both your brand presence and where you're putting your logo and your tagline and your brand advertising, if you're going to do that out there, as well as all of the other content and presence that your brand has. That could mean physical signage and place if that's part of your buyer's journey. But more often than not, we're talking website, we're talking brochures, we're talking sell sheets, downloads, etc. Anywhere someone can come across your brand out in the wild should match that visual identity that you're using when you're trying to raise brand awareness on the front end. Second, carve out your position. If you can't concisely state who you are perfect for and what you offer, you're going to have a hard time raising awareness and allowing System 1 to surface your brand at the time when System 2 is looking for that solution. It's also going to prevent, if you're not clear on who you're perfect for, System 1 will filter you out as not relevant for all of your prospects. So carve out your position, have that nailed down. Consider a tagline that does just that. This allows you to, when you have those opportunities to get your logo out there, associate it with a tagline that tells your audience what you offer and who you're perfect for right underneath the logo. Now you can take advantage of, cheap sponsorships and other, opportunities to just get your logo on things out in the marketplace in ways that will help build that brand awareness, but also train System 1 as when you're relevant. And then finally, you're going to want to create static and dynamic representations of your brand. Dynamic can be HTML5 advertising with animation on it that you can run digitally. It could be a 6-second and a 15-second video. Those are really the easiest ways that you can convey that market position concisely, while at the same time introducing a very strong visual identity. 6 seconds are great for YouTube. That's why I say 6 seconds. 15 seconds you'll run on connected TV. You'll incorporate into other videos that you're producing. You'll run on other media and video placements. So then we talk about deliver. Oh, and then static. You're going to want to make sure that when you put your logo on something, that you're taking advantage of this psychology and including that tagline or that very short sentence that says what your solution is and for whom it's perfect. When we get to delivery, on the digital side, there's lots of options. Our goal is to get a relatively low frequency of these brand impressions over a longer period of time. And so you can do that with retargeting. Anybody who visits your website, retarget them for 3-6 months with your brand advertising. You can do that with CRM targeting. You have an audience in your email database or in your CRM that you're trying to nurture. Go ahead and upload that to Facebook, or Facebook doesn't do great with brand ads, but there are ad platforms that you can run media against with your CRM audience. Geofence, same thing. Some platforms let you do that. IP targeting. Whitelisting is where if there's certain trade publications or publications where your audience regularly hangs out, you can actually target ads at remnant inventory. They're really cheap. And if you can't do that, but you know your audience is in the same place all the time, it may be worth doing a direct buy to get the brand ad out there over and over and over again. Traditional sponsorships, you'd be amazed at some of the in-kind and relatively cheap sponsorships you can find if you look hard. It's a great opportunity to get a logo and a tagline that, again, conveys that position of what you offer and for whom it's perfect. And then if you've got some extra budget, out of home and outdoor are great for brand awareness if you've got the budget for it. But I said without a budget. So one of the questions we get from clients over and over again is, well, what about banner blindness? We're producing this one brand ad and running it for forever. Aren't people going to tune it out because we aren't changing it up? And the answer is yes. But the answer is also, we don't care if they stop seeing your ad. We're marketing to the filter that is causing them to stop seeing your ad. And you know what? The filter is still going to see it. So even though System 1 isn't passing the ad on to System 2 because it doesn't have a CTA anyway, System 1 is learning every time it sees it. And it's that rote repetition Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. We talk about measurement. Measurement on a budget is actually a challenge. If you want to run aided and unaided awareness studies, they're expensive. So how can you tell if you're actually making any dent in your brand awareness? And the answer is what we like to use, and it doesn't work for every brand because sometimes you run into issues, is tracking the number of branded queries in Google search. So I can run a report in Google search that will allow me to track the number of queries containing a brand name over a period of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc. And we actually plot this out month by month for our clients. As long as your brand name isn't easily confused with another brand or another thing, this is a great way to know if you've got people seeking you out by name, which would happen if System 1, if it alerted System 2 that, oh, you need such and such, you should look at this brand over here. You need B2B marketing, you should look at Brilliant Metrics, right? So it's a fabulous proxy. A couple things you do need to know, like you'll see those spikes in the middle there. That's when we did some intensive recruitment, which is different. That's not really impacting our brand awareness among our prospects around our target audience, but it's going to impact the graph. So we have to discount those periods of time. Same thing could happen if you have a big PR situation that popped up, sale, merger, something along those lines. It's going to really skew your data for a brief period of time. Then you can go back to tracking it normally. So let's sum everything up. Traditional advertising relies on breaking through System 1 to get to System 2. It breaks through the filter through strong hooks and emotion and fabulous storytelling, but that's expensive. A smarter play is to market to the filter. And you do that through strong visual identity, a clear market position, simple presentation, talking to a fourth grader or lower, and without a CTA. And then it's simply repetition, repetition, repetition. Go after cheap impressions in front of the same audience by hook or by crook, repeatedly over time. Measure your results using Google Search Console for free. You don't have to pay for a complex study to see whether or not you're moving the needle here. You will also see a greater uptick. You'll see greater response in your other offers, in your content, in the emails that you're sending. Everything will get a lift, but that's hard to measure necessarily quantitatively. So because you're running different content, right? But branded search queries is something that unless you've got a big PR or recruitment push, is going to be relatively consistent for you. So with that, I'm going to flip things over here to questions. The chat is quiet, which means either I did a fabulous job or I lost everybody 5 minutes in. Does anyone have any questions? If not, we have a great webinar coming up next month, the topic of which escapes my mind, but it'll be in your inbox. We're also launching B2B marketing breakfasts in Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin. So if you're in the neighborhood, stay tuned for some notifications about that. And we have a great workshop series coming up in the fall. All of these are fabulous reasons to follow us on LinkedIn if you haven't already. And if anything I talked about today sparks some interest or some questions or one-on-one, you're not really comfortable posting in the chat here, that middle QR code will let you schedule some time with me. This is not a pitch. Just happy to talk about what's going on for you and your brand and your organization, and I'll help you in any way I can. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful day.